And so this. So this was one of the main concerns, and of course the other initiative that always gets mentioned with some concern is DNS for EU. And again, while I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding, I mean, actually there's people criticizing this as a regulation, while it's not a regulation. It is just a project in which the European Commission is funding yet another resolver. But there are, I mean, people have concerns in terms of how this could evolve in the long term and whether this could actually become a requirement. So no, I'm not asking anything. So whether this could become a requirement for people to use, actually, so to limit the choice of DNS system. And then, of course, there's the reaction of the European community, which is generally in favor of everything, except very few pieces of regulation. So of course, the most contested one, even in Europe, is the proposal about season filtering and monitoring, which basically implies even if conditional, a way to force messaging providers and hosting providers to basically screen content that they host on behalf of their users. And so this could imply breaking encryption, or even if you find ways to do this without breaking encryption because you do at the client level, for example, before encryption or after decryption, it's still a way to monitor communications. And so even if, I mean, the way the proposal is framed now is that it will not be a blanket monitoring. It will be that the European Commission or the judiciary authority will have to provide proof that this system is generally often used for the propagation of child sexual abuse material. And so only in that case, there would be a process through which the authority would actually require the monitoring to be turned on. But still, this is monitoring. And so there's a lot of concern around that. And this crosses the discussion about internet fragmentation. So the principal discussion around this is stated that we all agree that if we want an open and global internet, we do not want to create borders. Then we also agree that in the end, national sovereignty still exists. And I mean, there have always been national laws impacting the internet since the internet was started. So where's the right middle point on this? What's the right compromise between the global nature of the internet and the need of countries to exert a regulation and exert their sovereignty? And so, I mean, there's this extreme point that says no national regulation should always happen. Everything should be global and multi-stakeholder. And because, I mean, even just by employing, for example, by applying different content criteria so that a certain content is legal here, not legal there, you are creating problems to services that are global. And so you are fragmenting the internet. And this is one extreme. The other extreme is like, well, no, anyway, it's normal and countries should just regulate whatever they want. And in the middle, again, there's this discussion that maybe we should have a technical layer 3, which is kept global and free from national regulation. And over that, applications and et cetera, markets and so could be regulated at the national level, and so could have different regulations depending on the countries in which you operate. And then, of course, there's also the discussion whether the approach of the European Union, which is as long as you do business in the European Union, you are subject to our laws, even if you are not European. If this is acceptable, it is a good thing, a bad thing, because of course, if all countries and regions of the world start having that approach, companies that are acting globally will be subject to lots of different and possibly contrasting regulations for the same service, depending on where the users are. And while maybe we will get used at having, I mean, for global services, geolocalized, always, so that you always have different rules to apply depending on where your users are coming from. But still, this is still under discussion. So as I said, it was interesting because you could see different viewpoints and different attempts to push the discussion in one specific direction or another. But I mean, apart from this, of course, EuroDIG is the preparatory conference for the UN Internet Governance Forum, which will be in December in Ethiopia this year. So it doesn't really produce anything except discussion and a set of messages which are currently being worked out. So which are sort of a recap of the discussion, so not even anything binding or particularly precise. So it will be sort of vague, I'd say. And this will be fed as input to the global IGF. But still, it was interesting to see all the different viewpoints, people, and have chats and side chats. And so I really enjoyed being there. So I don't know if anyone has specific questions around EuroDIG or around these policy issues. I'd be happy to answer. Otherwise, we can proceed.
Okay, thanks, Vittorio. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Arno?
Yes, thank you, Vito. So, Vito, I must say you spoke at the speed that I had difficulties to take notes.
Yeah,
to be really honest with you, but I think thank you for giving us a heads up. So first question, you said Euro, because I don't know EuroDIG, so I really can't judge. You said it is preparation for something, and I could not hear what you said at that moment in time.
Yeah, okay. So this is part of the global process that was created by the United Nations to provide a discussion space for internet policies, which is the UN Internet Governance Forum, which happens, or IGF, you might know, which happens yearly. And this year it will be in Ethiopia, and last year was in Poland in December. So throughout the year, there are local and regional meetings in basically everywhere. Great. So in Europe, we have national IGFs. So there is, I guess, an IGF in France. There's definitely one in Italy, one in the UK. And these are usually like one-day meetings or two-day meetings in which the national community discusses positions and topics. Then there's EuroDIG, which is this sort of European meeting. And then you have a discussion at the European level. And then all these discussions are brought as opinions or proposals to the global event.
So EuroDIG is then, is it who is funding or who is shepherding this one? Is it the EU or is it completely dissociated?
It is a private nonprofit which is organizing this. It's actually 2 or 3 people that everybody knows in the community. They are funded, I'd say, by, if you look at the sponsors, mostly are like CCTLDs and this kind of internet. Even ICANN is partly funding that. Sponsoring that. And then of course, they are in strict connection with the European Commission. So you often have high level, even this year, you have high-level officers from the Commission that show up, participate in meetings and in debates. So it's actually a good chance if you want to meet the people from the Commission. Well, there are other options like the HLIG or these kind of places, but EuroDIG is usually a good place.
Okay, thank you. Because I think I know more the European Internet Forum, the EIF, if you know them.
Yeah, I know that. I think that's actually a sort of, if I remember well, an association with that name. So it's not really like a forum, a private NGO, which does connect the companies. I think it's maybe, if I remember well, because there's a more private sector into that. EuroDIG, in the end, it's mostly about government people, a commission, and civil society, academia. There is some private sector, but not so much of that.
Okay, that's why I probably never run into them. Okay. Let me take a note. So, okay, that was my first question. The second question, actually, let me lower my end. But the second type of question is more on the content of it. Well, yeah, frankly speaking, I agree on the spectrum you make in terms of the risk of fragmentation. I mean, this is exactly where we are going with this, from my point of view. But I think the center of gravitation for fragmentation is bigger and bigger and bigger each time passes, because Ukraine is going to increase the divide. I mean, there are more political forces for fragmentation than for openness. And frankly speaking, with what's going on in terms of, sorry, I'm trying to reach me. With what's going on in terms of new IP and so on, I really don't see how we are going to recover from fragmentation at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, if I may, I think that's also why we need to be clear on what we mean by fragmentation. Because, I mean, if you take the, let's say, maximalistic approach that I've seen in the internet community, like every regulation is fragmentation. There's an article in Politico, which is, I don't know if people know it, it's a sort of the most prestigious Brussels policy online magazine. And an article by a former ISOC headquarter officer, like last week, trying to argue that basically everything the European Union is doing, including, I mean, competition regulation, is fragmenting the internet, and basically the EU is turning into China. So, I mean, this is a respectable viewpoint.
Sorry, that the EU is what with China?
It's turning into China. So basically it's taking the Chinese approach to the internet, just because it wants to basically restore some competition with the big tech, American big tech. So this is a line that is usually pushed by the big companies. But I think that if you take that approach, the result is that, I mean, you never get to anything, because then, I mean, if we are clear that fragmenting IP is one thing and having competition and application and market regulation is another, then you can fight the layer, the fragmentation at the IP layer. If we say that, well, everything is fragmentation, then nothing is fragmentation. And so you will lose some allies in this kind of battle. So I think we should focus, personally, I think, we should focus the battle on keeping the technical layer, the transport layer, unique and global and unhindered. And accept some regulation at the content level, because that's politically necessary. There is no way that countries will refuse doing content regulation. That's also what basically the society expects from them.
No, I agree with the intention. It's more that I'm pessimistic that the intention will survive given the forces that are engaged. And when I was meaning China, I meant the new IP proposal from China, if you know of this one. This is a technical revisit of the internet completely, and they need it for another reason, political reason, because if they don't have that, they can't get to what they want regarding their internal politics. So if they keep pushing on that, the reaction on other parties will be exactly opposite, and it will force a real fragmentation, which will not just be cosmetic. It's going to be a fragmentation of internet, then all the infrastructure below, in particular 5G and 6G, will fragment because the big players will engage their proprietary extensions. And then when you go down the level, the clouds are fragmented already. And then you continue to scroll down, you will see that you are going to end up, but all of this is done on which machines and which chips, US chips or Chinese chips. That's it. Yeah. So now if you add the regulation, because there are other regulations, you spoke about NIS2, but DORA is going to add an interesting mix into that. We're going to have other acts that are coming that are going to be super powerful, and that will increase a number of effects there. From my point of view. So to resisting fragmentation is going to be an interesting journey.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a risk of fragmentation at the global political and so economic layer. So of course, if the world really breaks into two blocks like we used to have with the Cold War.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But I mean, right now we are divided even on the technical community. I mean, look at ECH. I mean, we just cannot heal ourselves. It's just going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm not over. Let me give the speech to others. Sorry for taking the floor too long. But very good, Vittorio. I really appreciate your speech.
Just while you're talking, you'll see in the chat, Marek has posted a link to an article from the IGF, or an internet session or an initiative rather, at the IGF on fragmentation. So that's obviously a topic which will continue from EuroDIG through to the IGF session in Addis Ababa, presumably. So thank you, Marek, for posting the link. I've also posted in the chat a link to recordings from the EuroDIG sessions, which I have to say I thought were some very good discussions. It's certainly in the formal sessions. If you, the link will take you to the agenda for the for the 2 days or 3 days if you count day 0, and then against each topic you can then link to both the recording as well as a transcript as well, if that's easier. So there's plenty of material there. Does anyone else have any comments or questions for Vittorio? Not seeing any more raised hands at the moment. In which case, thank you, Vittorio, for just doing that off-the-cuff summary. That's much appreciated. And as I say, I thought it was a good event. I think the change to the structure from last year certainly seemed to go well, as far as I could tell.
There is some discussion going on whether that leads to too many overlaps between sessions, but I mean, everything needs to be adjusted. This was the first year, so.
Yeah, which was good. Sorry, Arno, you had another comment?
Yes, I forgot a question. Vittorio, you went quite fast on the NIS2 topic. Could you come back on that and re-explain me perhaps slower? So I'm very tired already on a Monday. What was the point of NIS? What was the specific that NIS2 is trying to regulate on the route servers? And that would be a potential problem.
Yes, I mean, I did not go into depth into that because it's solved basically. So the problem was that in the first draft of NIS2, I think it was already like 2 years ago, root servers were among the, I don't remember how they are called, but it's like essential services that need to be subject to this kind of, basic SLA requirements and so on, and cybersecurity assessment and etc. So then that was a point of principle saying, I mean, why are you regulating the root server system? But in the end, there was already quite some strong reaction by ICANN directly with the European Parliament and the Commission. So this was already eliminated in one of the later revisions. So as far as I know now, it's not there anymore. So this has been avoided. And in the end, I mean, everybody was started by being very upset, but then they realized that people simply had not understood the implications of the law that they were writing, which is what happens most of the times. So once people explained, then this was revised. So I think it's not there anymore. I'm not an expert of NIS2, though.
Because the issue I ask is NIS, and I know very, very well the director who at the commission that did NIS is now retired from the EU, but I know him very well. And when he did NIS, when he finished NIS, he was extenuated. I think I don't know if he burned out or what, but he was extenuated. But still, NIS was pretty much empty when you really look at it. Right? From a pure operationalization perspective, it was pretty much empty. So at some point, people have to understand what they want. I mean, if they want to have a regulation for national infrastructure and critical infrastructure, in this case, well, you will have to consider the elements and the constituencies, and you cannot just hide themselves. They are there. If you do not impose some minimum on them, what can you do? It's very strange. It's very paradoxical what we are doing here. Anyway, that's my okay. So, but thank you for clarifying what you meant by that. Over.
Thanks, Arnaud. I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so let's move on. But thank you, Vittorio, for covering that. And apologies for I forgot to switch on recording at the start, so apologies for disturbing your thought process partway through when the
no, don't worry.
came on. But appreciate that. Okay, let's then sort of change topics and ask Andreas to unmute and talk a little about the DDI Society. I was going to say Internet Society. That's something entirely different. The DDI Society that you sort of touched on at your sort of user group meeting from a couple of weeks back now.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, and thanks for the idea to share this with that group. It's maybe not the right audience, but it's at least a way to spread the word. So for people that are not familiar with the phrase DDI, it stands for DNS, DHCP, and IPAM, which is the topic that I'm dealing with since 10 years, nearly every day. So we are not focusing on DNS providers or root server providers or something like that. So we are actually targeting end customers, so car manufacturers, automotive suppliers, retailers, universities, yada, yada, yada. So people that are just using DNS, DHCP, and IP address management. A while ago, we started an initiative that is called the DDI User Group, which is quite successful. And Andrew is a regular guest on our show to share updates on encrypted DNS and stuff like that. And this group is focused on these end customers. But over the last couple of months, I realized that we need something in addition. And I just asked my network if it would make sense to create something that I call a DDI Society, which means I would like to create a collection of people that really know DNS, DHCP, and IP address management, or we should call it DNS or DHCP or IP address management. I don't want to exclude everybody. So the feedback from my network was quite good. So they were just like, yeah, this is a brilliant idea. We should actually start something like that. And the initial idea was to actually start with a dedicated database where if you are a university and you would like to implement something, you can search for other universities that did something. And then you can get in touch with the people that did that over there. Or if you're looking for somebody to help you, you can just search the same database. With regards to GDPR and other regulations, it's not that easy to create such a database. So we just ended up for now with a LinkedIn group where we started to collect people that we know, people that were recommended to us. We sent invitations to a little bit more than 40 people right now, and the LinkedIn group now has 23 members, I guess. And this group includes, for example, people that have written some of the books that are just behind me. And what I just tried to separate the real experts from the, let's say, so-called experts, because some of the DDI vendors, they actually started heavily in, spreading certifications. So if you look for DNS or DHCP or IP address management related certificates on LinkedIn, for example, you will find tens and thousands of people. And some of them, I would call them certification hunters. So 6 months ago, they had no clue what DNS and DHCP actually means. And they just went from one training to another training, and they just collected certificates from various vendors, or all the certificates that are available from one DDI vendor. And it's a completely different story to just have a certificate, because it means that during an exam, you checked the right checkbox. That's all an exam means. But it's a completely different story when you are responsible for a DNS and DHCP infrastructure since 10 years, or if you are working for a system integrator and you implemented dozens of different setups over a couple of years, or if you are working for a DDI vendor and you are actually the go-to person when it comes to really, really complicated stuff. And Andrew had the idea during our last meeting of the DDI user group, when I presented the current status of the DDI Society, to just take the chance during this call to ask for participants. So if you think that this is a group that you would like to participate, feel free to just join this group. And for now, we are just actually collecting people, so that there's not much going on right now, because we are still in the process to collect some people. We know a couple of people already, which means that we can just send out invitations on LinkedIn, or when people would like to join the LinkedIn group, it's just we just need to approve it. So it's a closed group, so not everybody can join, so they need an approval to join. But we don't know everybody, and if there's somebody knocking on our door that we had never had the chance to talk to, we actually created a kind of a little web form where people can just highlight what they did with regards to DNS, DHCP, or IP address management in the last couple of years. So feel free to just check out the LinkedIn group, or just try to connect to our website. I just shared the 2 links in the chat to participate. Or if you know people that are a pretty good fit for this community, just share the link with them, and we are happy to bring them on board. That's pretty much it for now. Thanks for the opportunity, Andrew.
Great, thanks, Andreas. Does anyone got any comments or questions for Andreas? Unsurprisingly, having seen your comment in the chat, Tim, I thought you might have. So
I figured, Andreas, this is interesting. I will join this. I've been doing DDI stuff at sort of the enterprise level for the past 10 years at multiple companies. So cool. I've done Infoblox migrations. I've done BlueCat migrations. I've worked on the BT Diamond stuff. So I've had my hand in all sorts of messy things. How's a good way to say that?
So happy to have you on board. So for now, the group on LinkedIn is quite empty, and I know that LinkedIn is not the best approach, but for us it's much easier. So I'm thinking about something like, in the future, people should be able to I need an expert in Diamond IP that is familiar with the environments of universities and that is speaking my language, and that somebody that has done this in the last 10 years. And then you can find the results of that group, and then you can use LinkedIn to get in touch with these people. And it's much easier to use LinkedIn because people keep their profiles up to date most of the time. If we would like to create our own database, it's very, very complicated to knock on the door of the people once in a while to ask, hey, did you just had a fancy profile change with this product? And using LinkedIn for now is pretty okay, I would say. But happy to have you on board.
So yeah, no, thanks. And I figure that's why we'll see some of these vendors kind of show up. I noticed you, Andrew, you had Infoblox on the list, and I figure you'll talk to the Mice and Men guys and stuff like that. So,
Yep.
Yep. So cool. No, thank you for that. So, and thanks for the links. I will stick my nose in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and as Andreas, as you said, if people think of others that would be sort of have expertise in the space, feel free to pass the link on as well. I think this is the sort of thing where word of mouth works well to spread engagement. Okay, I can't see any other hands raised, so I will move on. So thanks for that, Andreas, and let's be interested to see how that grows over the sort of coming weeks and months. So let me switch back to share my screen again. Okay, so let's talk a little bit, just mention a couple of recent developments, just to signpost those. First one, just in case you not notice it, the final agenda for IETF 114 came out on Friday, so that's now available. So you can see the finalized agenda and work out where the diary clashes might be, and work out what you can and can't attend. So the links provided for that. I also spotted a story over the last week about some vulnerabilities in Apple's private relay service, which an Israeli company has highlighted. So you may find that of interest. And similarly, information on some malware that undertaking sort of man in the middle or person in the middle attacks using both DNS and HTTPS, hijacking and hitting a variety of different routers from different vendors. So I just sort of included that this week, given the sort of potential for DNS highlighting, and then a couple of tutorials. One which is pretty comprehensive from SIDN. In the Netherlands, so worth sort of covering various facets of DNS matters, both in theory and practice, and also on the RIPE blog there was a post just explaining Anycast, so a bit of background on that for people. And then just two other things which I've sort of pulled out. One was a reminder that the sort of cutoff for standard rate registration for IETF 114 is next Monday at 23:59 UTC. So if you're planning to register and haven't got around to it yet, the on-site registration goes from, I think currently it's $850 is standard rate, and it will increase to $1,000 after next Monday. That's also the cutoff, by the way, for any submissions to the data tracker. So if you've got any internet drafts either underway or planned that you want to potentially table at IETF 114, you've got till next Monday to get those submitted through the data tracker system. So just a reminder, the clock is ticking on those now if you have aspirations on that. And then also, just for completeness, although there's a bit more time for it, actually I think that date's wrong. DNSOARC early bird registration ends, I'm not sure it is the 6th of July. I will check that and correct that afterwards if it isn't. I don't think it is. I think it's later in the month than the 6th. So apologies in advance that I may have got that wrong, but I will check afterwards. So that was it in terms of just some recent developments. I guess the main one probably there is the potential flaws in private relay, taking advantage of some of the oblivious capabilities to launch attacks, if you read the linked article. So you sort of read up on that. Just looking at future events, if we go past the obvious ones at the end of this month, then we got a gap through to September, as you can see, after which time we get to ICANN UK North in September. Various other things running through to ITF 115 without getting too far ahead of ourselves in November, so that's only a few months away. And then the reason I mentioned it at the end there, the Internet Governance Forum IGF 2022 in Addis Ababa, which sort of Vittorio mentioned earlier. So that runs at the end of November, which I think is slightly earlier in the year than usual. From memory, I thought it was usually first week December, but I may be wrong. So that's that. Thank you, Andreas, for putting the dates. Oh, okay, it is the 6th of July. I was thinking, sorry, of the actual registration deadline being the 31st of July. But yeah, if you want the early bird, you've got 2 days. So best going to move on, otherwise the rate, I'm assuming, will increase from, I think it's $500 at the moment, the sort of early bird rate. So that will just notch up slightly afterwards. And also a reminder with DNS OARC, that's co-located with ITF 114. It takes place on the Saturday and Sunday immediately following the end of ITF 114 in the same venue. Yeah, and thank you, Marek, for highlighting that IGF will confirm which workshops it's running with quite shortly, end of this week. So the program will become a little clearer after that. Okay, then just looking ahead on these calls, we may well come back to talk a little bit more about Encrypted Client Hello, ECH, on this call next week. So watch this space for confirmation about that probably later this week, one way or the other. Then following Monday, we will go through some of the sort of topics likely to be of interest on the agendas for ITF 114 and DNS OARC. Just to sort of highlight those so you can see what's coming up. And then we'll obviously skip the call on the 25th because a number of us will be in Philadelphia for ITF itself, but we'll do a roundup of some of the highlights from both conferences on 4th August, just sort of taking us through to the following month. I should have an update, by the way, on the sort of postponed panel discussion on deployment and scaling of encrypted DNS resolvers. You'll recall I hope to have Comcast and Google on that, as well as Infoblox and Open-Xchange, but I hope to have a date in the next week or so on that, but potentially it will be in a few weeks' time, clearly, looking at what we've already got scheduled. And likewise, some of the other topics, you'll see the dates for those start to firm up shortly. Oh no, you got your hand raised, sorry, which I may have missed when you raised it. Just noticed that. So did you want to come in?
Yeah, Andrew, but no pressure. I mean, I just wanted you to finish. So I have a few comments on what you just described, and thank you for. And I really don't know how you are doing to keep up with all of these meetings, information, blog articles, and congratulations just on that. That's very useful. The second piece as well is that unfortunately I was in flight like all the past 3 weeks, so I missed like nearly a month of your calls. A few things. First, regarding the schedule of things in the coming months, there is going to be the ITU plenipotentiary that will happen on the 30th of September until the 14th of October. No, sorry, before. It will be the 24th of September until the 14th of October. The reason why I mention this event, first, it's a major geopolitical event where there will be probably 180 countries with perhaps 2,000 to 3,000 diplomats in the same room. And usually, last time I went there in Dubai 4 years ago, there were a lot of discussions about DNS there. and internet governance. So it's a really major topic where the administrations of these worlds have to debate on resolutions, United Nations style resolutions about internet governance, and it's a fierce battle. And with the Ukraine crisis, it's going to be even worse. So just to be mindful, this is quite of a major event. I know a couple of people who are attending your meetings, Andrew, are as well engaged into a number of battles there. So will there be anything major or not? You never know. You have to wait for the contributions to happen. But if, for example, the Chinese try to make it on new IP, you can be sure that's going to be quite of an interesting show. So that's one perhaps for your list. The second piece is regarding the panel that you're trying to set up with Google and others. I don't know if I can contribute, but I would be happy to be part of this one. The third, let's be honest, the agenda for next week is pending on me for ECH. I didn't realize that there was the cutoff date for the 11th for ITF, but I will do my best to produce another internet draft. And my intention is very simple, is to focus on the enterprise business and explain the parties that are for ECH, why we have problems with it in more details. So I did some research. I have quite of an idea of how I want to structure this internet draft. And unfortunately, what I realized that I will not have enough time to get feedback from the team to get something that could have been more, let's say, backed up, so to speak. But I clearly intend to do that because there are a number of things that I really don't understand. Speaking of which, there is one thing I really do not understand, which is the level by which ECH is going to grease the DNS, right? Is it that now some people have decided that the DNS will become a directory service with all the new RRs that are going to be added for ECH and many other things, by the way? Very surprised. But there are plenty of other things that that I really am not getting. And I will share what I can with you this week, and hopefully by the 11th I'm done. If not, I remember that when I was more active in IETF, which I just restarted because for more than a year and a half, I was supposed not to work in standardization by my company, which then was reverted. I remember that I did some late submissions, and I think they were still reviewed somewhere by, I think there was a track of, I don't know, independent drafts or insect dispatch. I forget how it works now, so I would have to remember. But so if I fail, let's say, if I get substantial feedback next week on if I manage to produce my draft, then perhaps I will take the risk to submit late. Would be
Others will know this better than me, but don't they lock data tracker so you can't actually submit through data tracker?
Yes, actually, now I remember they lock it, but they unlock it the first day of IETF, and then you can resubmit on the first day. Because I've been through that once. I had to do a very late submission. But you are right. They lock it, but they then unlock it the first day, probably. They lock, but you can.
Tim has, who's certainly more knowledgeable than I am on this, which is not hard, says right. You can get an area director bypass. So if you can get an area director interested, I presume in. Yeah. Okay. Well, Tim,
the other good thing is if you put it in someplace like GitHub, you can actually just email the working group during that 2-week window and point people to your repo, right? Which also would work too.
Okay, thank you, Tim. That's very helpful because it's a long time I've not done it, so
yeah, and before we never, it was always XML in people's private, machines or something, right? So, but I've seen that in DNSOP, and it works well too, right?
Appreciate. Thank you, Tim. Very helpful. Yeah.
Oh, well, there you are then. There are ways of doing it if if you know the system well, which
well, let's see, maybe I'm too immature to produce it on the 11th, and in this case what I will definitely not do is I will not make something bad. If the quality is not there, I will not deliver on the 11th period, and I will wait for feedback and improve what I can.
Yeah. Just as an aside, without knowing the direction that you're planning to go in on the content, Arnaud, I'll send you a link afterwards because I can't multitask well enough to find it whilst I'm talking. If you look at the paper that we put to Sec Dispatch at the last meeting, which was looking at sort of the implementation challenges sort of raised by ECH, that might provide a foundation from which perhaps we could do a version 02 of that draft, which might speed things up for you, and you could just add more detail on the enterprise content rather than have to start completely from scratch. So that might be worth a look.
Yep. Good suggestion, Andrew. I just want to for the moment to have it really outside of any format so that I can get the pure message I want to get, and then we can perhaps see the outcome. But in essence, my message is very simple. The message, if we don't have time. Oh yes, we have what, 5 minutes. I can.
We're okay. Yeah.
Okay. So the message is very simple. Is that to be honest with the team, I had a discussion offline with Kenji Bao, whom we know here. When I realized his last name was French and his first name is Japanese, so I realized he was half French, and therefore I wrote him in French. It was interesting how he approached things, and I don't want to disclose things that he does not want me to disclose. But in essence, the message that people think there is that we can trust the device. This is what they think. And I think by we can trust the device, they really mean we can trust the browser. So the point is, if you go that path, you are going to go back exactly the class internet draft that I had to stop when I was asked to stop standardization work, which is if you want to push the security on the endpoint, the issue is that you cannot be judge and party, right? And the issue that you have in the browser is that there is no way the browser can protect himself against not man in the middle, but man in the browser. A man in the browser attack, and I figured out with a big persona in my company who is the person who has debugged entirely the Stuxnet story 10 years ago when the Iranian got attacked. He's very famous. You can see him in the documentary that has been pushed, and we discussed it. And he showed me, Arnaud, the only way you can protect people against such an attack is by looking at the page. Looking at the page means you need to have access to the SNI, period. There is no other way. I mean, if you do not offer that, we're going to basically say the following. Trust me as the browser. Yes, but when I cannot trust you, what do we do? If you remove these worlds a way to defend, how are you going to protect? It's just an absurd proof. So I think there is a fundamental issue that this is the issue that they are causing by believing encryption equals security is the first fraud. Encryption does not equal security. I'm sorry. So this is done to say, so if encryption equals security, so then we just need to protect the endpoint. It just doesn't work. And so then the other things are to debunk a few opposition points I got last time in IETF 113. All the companies of a certain size, all of them are doing network security, all of them. And you know why? They have a simple problem, just in EU called GDPR. They must look at what the content is, otherwise they are not compliant and they are fined. It's very simple. So it's not about wiretapping, it's not about that, it's not about what DKJ has pushed me on my face again, wiretapping. I promise you, companies, if they could not do that, they would not do it. But they have no choice. So I'm going to just keep a couple of reminders there to be current and just then try to explain people I would love we could discuss it properly. I start to be tired of this battle, but I start to see an accumulation of too many things. Right? I don't understand this greasing of the DNS. I don't understand this this very obscure link between the client-facing server to the backend server. Really obscure. Does it mean all the business goes to the CDNs now and the others cannot do business anymore? Really? Is it a matter of calling back on regulatory dominancy of market? There are too many things that are spinning wrong in this story. So how we need to edit that is another story. But basically, that's my intention.
You potentially teed up an interesting discussion for next week if you have the bandwidth, Arno, I think. I just managed to find the link to the document, the data tracker. So again, if you have time, just look at that. I know you saw it at ITF 113, but just as a reminder, and if that works as a foundation for, we could easily do a version 02 of that.
Okay. But believe me, Andrew, I shared that already in 4 workshops with major organizations. The next workshop will be the 27th in your country in London.
Good. Okay. Right. So as I say, that's maybe teed up an interesting discussion for next week if time permits. So let's move on from there then. So anything else on anyone else's mind that you want to bring up in the remaining sort of 3-4 minutes or so that we have? Give you a moment to think and either pop something in the chat, raise your hand, whichever is easier. I'm not seeing any takers at the moment. Tim.
I just wanted to follow up and say I think he's got you have the right approach on doing your writing. But if you just get stuck with process stuff, just reach out to me. I put my email in there, or Suzanne, because that's what we're here for, right? Is to make process like go away for authors. Okay. So don't stress it. Let us stress it. Let us worry about it.
Thank you, Tim. That's very helpful. But Tim, because I don't know you, or I don't recognize your name now. Are you? What is your role in IETF? Just so that
I chair DNS Op with Benno, who's at NLNet Labs, and Suzanne Wolf, who's at PIR, and I also co-chair DNS Privacy with Brian Haberman. So I chair 2 working groups, and I kind of touching a lot of stuff. So
you definitely.
I know.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So
brilliant. Thanks for that, Tim. Yeah, invaluable to have someone that's well versed in the intricacies of the IETF processes, which can catch out the unwary from time to time. Right, well, on that really positive note, let's finish there. So thank you, everyone, for your time. I hope that was useful. Apologies for not switching on the recording at the very beginning, so we missed some of Vittorio's initial observations on EuroDIG, but those on the call hopefully found that beneficial. Anyone in the States that isn't on the call, I trust you're enjoying the 4th of July, but not too much. Have a fantastic week, everyone, and we'll catch up again same time next Monday. So see you all then. Thanks all.